and you wish within the settings here. So if your credit union's changed from the indicative ratings that the PRA have set, you can change these here and the software will pick that up. And lastly, you can enter details of other websites within the software. Once you've done that, most of the software comes within 5 modules that you see from the left, and in each of these areas you also see the information icon. If you click on that, it will bring up a website, and that has further information on each of the screens. I'll have screenshots, and it'll give you further guidance on how to complete each area. Just starting on the first one in terms of risk policies. Under risk policies, it would give you the option if you've got any specific policies and you want to store them within the software, so you can keep all of your risk information together. You would just type in the name of what the policy is called and just double click on the paperclip icon, and that would let you attach any document. The main area of the software though is under risk evaluation. If you go in within that, this will let you enter in any risks that you have, as well as getting all of your risk reports. So the place to start would be enter risk. And basically for each risk of the credit union, it would look for you to enter the details of the risk, what the control is, and then to give it a score in terms of its likelihood and impact before you put any controls in. And it works on a scaling of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest risk. And then it would ask you to put in the risk after you put the control in place. The software will then calculate the inherent score and the residual score. And based on what you've classified as being an issue, acceptable and unacceptable, it will then give the residual score a rating. In this case, risk number 5 has a residual score of 20, which is unacceptable. It then lets you decide which areas that you want to allocate the risk to, and again, that would be from the list you set up earlier and the person that you're allocating that risk to. You could then enter details of how often that risk should be looked at and when the next review date is. You've then got an option at the bottom to tick if it's a compliance risk, and that would just mean that your compliance officer can get a complete list of all of these risks. An incident would happen as if the risk actually crystallised. So if you failed your ratio, you were having regulated action, you could click in there that it's actually no longer a risk and it's actually happening, and that would then appear on a different register, and we'll come back and have a look at that later. So once you've entered your risks, you can get a variety of different reports on these. For instance, if you click on ineffective controls, you'll get there a list of any risks where the actual control has made no difference to the risk score. And the purpose of this then means you can look at these risks and either you've not scored them correctly or the control's been ineffective. It's not made any to the likelihood or the impact of that risk, and therefore it's a list of controls that you need to review again. You can also get reports of risks based on severity. So here I can ask for all of, I want to see just unacceptable risks, or I may want to have a look at any ones which has come up as an issue. So in this case, because there's only about 4 risks entered, there's nothing appearing under issues. I can see my risks based on category, or I can decide to see all of the risks subdivided. I can see the risk by person responsible. So if I decided to specify the role, and then based on the menu, be clicking 1 for finance manager, and that would give me a list of all of the risks assigned to that finance manager. So the purpose of this, it means you can get reports to individuals, so your chief executive, your finance manager, compliance officer, chairman, they can get a list of risks that they're responsible for and they can keep an eye on. It will also give you a list of any risks which are due for review. So it'll pick up the date for the next review and give you anything that's due within the next 30 days. It will also give you a risk of any ones where it's past the review date. And again, that means you can focus on these ones and look at them. So the risks due for review, it will pick up the ones due for review date and highlighting the ones which are particularly old as well for you. So one of the key things in terms of the software is it lets you interrogate your risk database so that you can pick up any risks where it's high severity. You can look at this by area, this by responsibility, by the review date. And it just then means in terms of board reporting or reporting to individuals, you can actually produce meaningful reports that give them the information that they want. I said before, if you clicked incident, at that point the risk would disappear from your risk register and it would appear in a risk of incidents. What that then means is you then can go into edit incident and you can start logging the action. I would imagine in most cases that function won't be used very often by credit unions, but it would be more a case of where you actually have got a serious problem and you're wanting then to start logging actions that are getting taken against it. And then once incident's cleared, once you untick that box, it will be moved back into your risk register. Any questions at all in terms of the risk register aspect of the software? If you click the print icon up at the top, it will print out all of the key reports just in one go. We have been at a conference and that was one of the recommendations from the FTA. Risk appetites would be the second main section in terms of the software. And this under Enter Data would let you each month, it would look for some of your key financial figures to be entered in. Once that's been entered in, the software will then calculate your capital ratio, your liquidity ratio, and it will present it to you in the form of the graph. And this then lets you track how you're actually performing against what the credit union set as its risk appetite. So it's to try and present it in a user-friendly way. We know ratios are not very user-friendly for the board, and it's therefore trying to show it in a graph format where you can actually see how the credit union's performed over time, and you can actually see it in relation to what the risk appetite is for the credit union. It's got these ratios for all of the ones which the PRA have set, and it will also give you a basic risk appetite statement. So based on what you've entered before, it will give you a risk appetite statement saying how the credit union set the appetite and what it's basically set the appetite as the minimum in this case for capital to asset ratio and at what level to be reported at. And that's based on the information that's input. We know from a variety of credit unions risk appetite statements, one of the areas where credit unions have been asked to be able to produce these. So they're just looking at the one question that has come up in terms of identifying possible risk. And that's going back to the previous section. There's always an issue in terms of identifying risks, and every credit union will be different. We know from different organisations you'll see some which maybe have 10, 20 risks. Exercise in your own credit union though, because you can learn a lot from the business, especially if you can get a number of different people involved, because everybody sees their part of the business, and by going through this exercise you might help identify risks other people weren't aware of, and it can be very useful just to sit down and reconsider what the risks of your credit union are. We can certainly, for any credit unions going through this process, kind of give a starter for 20, and we can give an initial list of some risks to consider. But in terms of the actual scoring, it's very much up to the individual credit union to look at, because every credit union is different, and how you score these risks very much depends on the individual. Just going back to the risk appetite statements, there's basically those risk appetites there, and there are the statements. They are fairly basic statements for risk appetites, but it does give you a start in this area, and it does calculate the ratios for you. The next area is in terms of compliance. The software does have a compliance checklist within it, based on what's in the PRA and FCA rulebooks. As you change the months in the year, this will disappear, and that's basically because you won't expect to check every risk every month. For instance, testing whether the disaster recovery plan has been tested in the last 12 months, it'd be something that you would only look to test once a year. So it has got one there. What I would say in terms of the risk register is you really need to make sure that suits your credit union. It has got the basic or the key, the ones from the PRA, FCA register, but you need to make sure that's suitable for your credit union. Depending on the activities you're involved in, you may wish to add additional this there. It also has areas such as, it'll give you kind of a summary of what your main returns are, where the deadlines, and lets you click on the main guidance for them. It has a link of web resources. It's just saying to put everything in place for the compliance officer to make everything as easy as possible. Under monitoring, you'll have compliance risks. Again, that will give you anything that's been identified as being a compliance risk of the credit union. It'll give you the risk of overdue risks. Appetite issues will then go through and look at how you state your risk appetites and actually give you a list of anything in the last 3 months where the credit unions failed to comply. So in this case, in December, the liquidity ratio was at 20.39, which was above the maximum appetite the credit union has set. So it's given the compliance officer a note of that one. Similar, the loans and the share appetites are both, in fact, one's below and one's above the appetite set. So it's a way for the compliance officer just to try and keep track if there's any compliance issues. It's also quite a useful report for the board, because it just highlights if you're not meeting any of the PRA ratios. The last one there is in terms of internal audit, but I'll come and have a look at that just in the next section. In terms of internal audit, something we know from acting as internal auditors is it's often difficult for the credit union just to keep track of all of the different issues raised. So within the software, it just lets you keep track of issues raised by the internal auditor, what the due date is, the credit union's response, and when you've got that completed. Then the bottom section lets the internal auditor, when they come back, just note if they've then checked how the credit union's complied with that, and once they're happy, to mark that off as this should be cleared. The software can then keep a track of any issues which are still outstanding, and as well as any issues which have been cleared in the past. And where that comes in useful is there will be times when things might have been cleared, but issues then reappear in the credit union, and by having a history of issues, you can actually look back and see, have these been an issue in the past, and it might give you more of a feeling in terms of the history of the issue, and that maybe the new controls within haven't been working properly if the issue keeps reappearing. Any questions on any of that? The other thing just to see in terms of the software is it can come with a number of different interfaces. The one here that I'm showing is the complete one. You can have one which just lets people enter this but won't give them the full access to all of the areas. You can also have a different one which is just for the compliance officer and just focuses on the compliance officer's menu. So it's just to give a bit more flexibility. In terms of the number of people who can use the software, if it's set up on your server, then basically there's not any set limit. You can have different interfaces. What will happen is, certainly if you are within a risk and somebody else is editing it, when you come out, it'll give you a warning that somebody else has come into that software, and this might not be the most recent version, just before you save any changes. But no, there's no limit at all to, obviously, if you start having more than 2 or 3 in at one time, you'll start getting some flow down with the software, but you can have 2 or 3 people using it at the same time. And we've got that set up in a number of credit unions. To be honest, I always think with most software, yes, the best way of actually learning how to use it is just to play about with the software. Enter a few risks. You can always go back and delete them afterwards. Just clicking through the reports and just seeing what appears, what doesn't appear. It's the best way of actually learning it. I mean, the main areas that need to be entered each month are entering in actually any risks and entering in your financial data. Most of the rest of the software after that, it's mainly just a reporting tool after that, so you can interrogate the data and get out the key information that you want. The key thing, I mean, the key use of this software will be the actual risk register, and best place, yes, is just to go in, enter the risks that you currently have from that. The way we do our internal audit reports is it goes through and looks at the various risks and enter. So you will get a number of risks affecting the credit union from the internal audit reports. Even if some of these risks, you don't have an issue with them, just actually looking through the B and C sections of your report looks at the various risks that could affect your credit union, and we then look at the controls that apply. So taking any previous internal audit reports, go through the B and C section and have a look, see if these risks are entered, and just enter these ones. It's very much just up to the credit union just to enter any risks, any internal audit issues. We can certainly enter any internal audit issues from the previous report when we come out to do the next internal audit report. though at that stage you may have already wanted to have any internal audit issues entered before. There's also, as I said, there's help pages on the internet for that. But again, if there's anything that you're not sure of, anything not clear, just come back to me and I'm more than happy to go over that with you. Is there anything anyone wants me to go over again in any detail? No, there's no annual license fee in terms of the software. It's the one fee for the software, and that certainly covers any updates to the software for the next 12 months. If there was any issues or anything in the software, yeah, for clients, we'd be correcting that anyway. If there were any updates after that, yeah, we'd speak to you. But we certainly have had people who've had it over a year. We've certainly still, in some cases, provided free updates after that. It just very much depends on the scale of any update after the initial 12 months. But you still have the initial software after the 12 months period. I mean, if there's no more questions, I'll just close down the session. But you do know, if there's anything afterwards, just come back to me. I'm more than happy to go over this again. And I can certainly set up something like this just on a one-to-one basis for anyone who's got any specific questions.